So, prehistory of northern Ohio. We'll review some of the local prehistory of this area, looking at the major prehistoric groups who once lived here, and review a few of their sites as well. Chronology in Ohio is generally straightforward. We're going to be looking at the Paleo, the Archaic, the Woodland, the Late Prehistoric, the Erie, and then just a touch on the historic period a bit. So, the earliest people, the Paleo people, very nomadic, hunters and gatherers, and as we move through, we're going to see a change in lifestyle where they would use agriculture and then eventually have settled home sites. The names that are used, Paleo, Archaic, Woodland, these are names that have been given by archaeologists, so we don't know what these people called themselves. Of course, they did not leave any written records or anything like that. So the only things that we can learn about these people, it's through the artifacts that they left behind, the stone tools that they left behind, and the sites that they once inhabited. The American Indian inhabitants several thousand years ago used the landscapes essentially to their advantage, and they settled on sites. One of the major reasons was because of the topography of the site. So they would use high cliffs to their benefit. They had, of course, little land use effects because essentially very early on they were nomadic. So they moved around. Like the Paleo people, they followed their food, essentially. They would hunt the mammoths and mastodons, the caribou. Later on, we see agriculture, settled village sites, and seasonal campsites. Fishing seems to be throughout, however. The background image is the Beaver Creek in Amherst at the Shupe Homestead. Some of the sites that we see here in Lorain County are fortifications. And again, they use topography to their advantage. The Burrell Fort site, not too far from here in Sheffield Village, is right along the French Creek where Sugar Creek comes into the French Creek. And there is a point of land now protected by the Metro Parks where there was a fortification and a small village site. There are small mounded areas here which would be used to protect the site. But all around here you can see the ground drops off at a very steep grade, so it was perfect for a place to locate a little village site. Obviously, I don't expect you to read all these, but these are just some of the prehistoric sites in this area. So there are quite a few, and this is not even all of them. The sites in our area are multicultural, so they have a number of different cultures that used a particular area over thousands of years. The artifacts that this site came off of represent a number of cultures from an archaic style projectile point about 6,900 BC, a bifurcate, bi meaning the 2 points here at the base of the projectile point. You can see the late prehistoric Erie style triangle points, a thumb scraper. So of course nothing was wasted. If a projectile point or arrowhead was broken, oftentimes it would be reworked into a thumb scraper. And of course a variety of other fragments, center pieces of projectile points, the tip of a projectile point, a drill or a perforator. These artifacts came from the Cascade Park area in Elyria. Colonel Wietzen once said, "A backward glance at history will light the way to the future." And of course, he's very correct with that. This site, the Cascade Park site, again, multicultural. You see late prehistoric Erie-style projectile points. You see archaic bifurcates. You see a lot of scrapers, woodland representation as well. Colonel Wietzen noted that north of Elyria, in the Black River Valley, and especially in Sheffield Township, there existed one of the most populated areas to be found anywhere in the Lake Erie Basin. And a little quote from one of his books. He notes, starting at the junction of the east and west branches of the Black River in Cascade Park, we find ancient village and burial sites dotting both banks of the river. Each twist and turn of the stream as it winds its way to the lake makes another promontory or bluff on which forts and home sites were located. During my younger days, I was neglectful of this area where I was born and lived all my life. Colonel Wietzen, just so you know, was born in 1907, and he passed away in 1995. He says, I journeyed afar to other states and countries in search of the remains of prehistoric Indians, but after 50 winters and a few gray hairs, the desire to travel dimmed a bit, and I was content to stay near home and see what lay in my own backyard. And so that's from one of his 17 books that he published. But this map shows, of course, the split here of the east and west branches of the Black River flowing northward, and all the letters represent various prehistoric American Indian sites along the Black River. And this is very similar to the Vermilion River as well. Oh, thank you. So the Paleo Indians. The general thought is that these were the earliest peoples to come into the Americas. There is some discussion as to the accuracy of that, but generally we're going to stick to that for today, and that's the general accepted theory. So this is about 12,000 to 10,000 BC, or a little bit earlier. These were nomadic people, hunters and gatherers. They followed the herds of large animals, the mammoths and mastodons, into the Americas. The factor that they were nomadic necessitated a smaller toolkit. Of course, they couldn't carry a lot of tools around with them, stone tools, of course. So they had very few tools, multi-purpose tools that they would carry with them. They also hunted caribou. The fluted or unfluted projectile point or spear point is one of the most iconic versions or pieces that people might recognize, which I'll show a picture here soon, which is attributed to the Paleo people. They also had flint knives, square knives, end scrapers, and flakes that were prepared from prepared cores. They also had utilized flakes, which are essentially when you're knapping a piece of stone to create a projectile point or a knife, there's going to be that stone waste left behind. And a lot of times those flakes could be used if they were retouched and then made into a knife. They had hand or fist axes as well. The idea is that they used a land bridge or an ice bridge to cross into the Americas. Little or no evidence of the Paleo people north of the South Ridge, which is historically known as Route 113, because most of that area, here we are today, was actually covered in an ancient lake. The Paleo crossing site is one that I will be reviewing briefly as well. So just to give you an idea, of course, present-day Russia, Bering Sea, Alaska, and Canada, of course, it's not connected today, but the idea that thousands of years ago, there was a connection here either by a bridge of land or ice, which allowed these people to migrate into North America. And of course, they would have come through and then moved southward.